Hello. This session, this talk video session is about um, my ideas for the freedom to self segregate. A group human right. It doesn't make sense for an individual to self segregate unless hypothetically they're in prison, they want to go to their own cell. I'm talking about group self segregation, where people of a group choose to segregate themselves out of a larger group. And it is known that racial integration is a human right, both an individual right. Well, no, it's more of a group right. I guess it's an individual right too. It's a group, the right of a group to integrate, and I guess it's the right of an individual too. The right to integrated society. Racially integrated society is a human right, and racially segregated, self-segregated society is another human right. So there's two different choices people should have. The reason for that is to save racial differences. Well, some people think it's nice if everybody just merges themselves together racially, and Caucasians would be the beneficiary from getting African and Chinese genetics to help the Caucasians have a. You can see my lower lip is too big and my upper lip is barely enough to cover my teeth. So this is like the Beavis and Butthead, except for they don't have a big lower lip. They just have not enough upper lip to cover their teeth. So that's the thing about Caucasians, is that the Caucasians can be helped by Chinese genetics and African genetics to have better coverage of their upper teeth, to have enough upper lip to cover their teeth. So anyway, that's something that's always been a problem for me, is not having enough upper lip to cover my teeth. Okay. So, but those racial improvements can be made slowly, is the thing. You don't want to change something you like about yourself, like if there's still people who have blue eyes in Europe, and maybe some in America and Australia. So there's still people who have blue eyes, and they don't want to change that, and I wouldn't want to change that about them either. So it would take a long time to change people's race, specific racial features, without changing other racial features. I have said baldness is bad, and a mustache is bad, and a beard is useless. So Caucasians have these features that I estimated it would take 100,000 years of selective breeding to get rid of baldness, the mustache, and the beard, without changing the other features of the Caucasian race, so that Caucasians still look like Caucasians, sound like Caucasians. Well, except for the fact that so many of us have a deficient upper lip. Caucasians haven't got a good closing of the mouth. It doesn't close as I think it doesn't close as the Caucasian mouth is not as securely closed as an African mouth or a Chinese mouth. That's what I think. It depends on if they got an overbite and a big air passage and a good volume to their nasal passages, and then they might have a better closure of their mouth. So anyway, okay, race mixing, it's not all bad, but I'm not in any hurry. Okay, these are not immediate problems like we have to fix what's ugly about Caucasians, baldness, the mustache. We can't fix that anytime soon, but we should agree that those are bad traits. the baldness. Hypothetically, they could say, oh, the larger brain requires um, less insulation on it. I doubt that. I think it's from wearing hats. Caucasians have been wearing hats in a cold climate for tens of thousands of years, and we brought baldness on ourselves by wearing hats. That's my opinion. The cold climate necessitated wearing a hat. Well, then again, the question is, it raises the question, why don't women have baldness? Women also wear hats, and women don't have baldness. So apparently, it wasn't caused by wearing hats, or else women would also be bald. Caucasian women are not bald on their head, but it's not. There's no reason for baldness. It's not the cold climate because women aren't going bald. Caucasian women are not going bald. It's not caused by wearing a hat because Caucasian women also wear a hat and they don't go bald. And the beard is not caused by a cold climate because Caucasian women also live in a cold climate and they do not grow a beard. So these are weird choices of evolution that Caucasians have selected for, and I argue it is our original sin that we Caucasians selected for these weird, controversial, and ugly traits that are not natural to the entire human race. It's the Caucasians who have done this. We have a beard and a mustache. I haven't got enough eyebrows, and I've got baldness. And these are Caucasian features. And so we admire ourselves a lot, but then if you think about it, we should set aside some time to think about what we've done to ourselves and what we can do hypothetically with 100,000 years of if we all agree as Caucasians, and we can all make an agreement now that everybody's online, almost everybody's online, we can all agree that baldness is not desirable. It doesn't protect your head in the sun. If you're bald, it's better to have hair on top of your head. And women are not bald, so there's no reason for men to be bald. And the beard is concealing a badly formed chin. In many cases, my chin doesn't look very good, and that's why I wear a beard. So the beard can conceal a badly formed chin or a jaw that's not big enough, and the mustache can conceal a birth defect. So the mustache is a bad choice that we chose to do that, and probably Caucasians have more frequency of the occurrence of the mutated upper lip because we have the mustache, which allows a man to conceal it. So moving on from that, Caucasians are not everything that everyone should wish to be, and we shouldn't hate ourselves, but we should think seriously about, in 100,000 years, do we want to look exactly how we look now, or should we hope that we have hair on top of our heads? And we should still hope that there are blonde-haired people and red-haired people, not only dark-haired people. And we should hope that there are still people with blue eyes and green eyes and light eye colors, blue and green and hazel and gray eye colors. We should hope that we have not lost our uniquely light-colored eyes in the future. And we should hope that Caucasians have not lost the Caucasian facial structure, such as you see in the Middle East, in Egypt, in South Asia, and that's the source of their style of singing. Is their facial structure has a lot to do with not their style, but the sound of their singing, the vocal range that they have. So we should not wish to obliterate ourselves in terms of our genetic choices in the future. We should wish to keep ourselves more or less as we are, and then improve ourselves, modified with a little bit of conformity to resemble the Chinese and the Africans more, rather than going off on a limb to become a weird type of a person with a different. With a drastically different set of traits. So we should hope to be more conforming in the future, and it should probably we should expect it will take 100,000 years. Now, China wants international society. China is overrepresented in London. No, I'm sorry, Africa wants international society. China does not want international society. Africa wants international society, the black Africans. Now, African blacks are overrepresented in London. African blacks are overrepresented in Paris. African blacks are overrepresented in New York City and in the eastern United States. So blacks want international society. After the Suez Canal was created, blacks in Africa were deprived of international society. But blacks have always been wishing to get out into the world, and something about being in a geographical isolation zone made them really want to get out into the world. They feel they are so disconnected from the world by the distance of the Sahara Desert, the vast distances between the racially black region of Africa and the rest of the world. So Africans they feel deprived of international society, and they're always striving to get more international society. So I said this recently, and I've been saying variations of this idea. Why don't we return to Africa with new cities on the coastal regions of Africa? At first I was angry. Now I'm not angry anymore, but I'm still saying we can return to Africa. They want international society. That's why there are so many Africans, blacks in London and Paris and throughout Europe, is because they want international society. And so international society can go to Africa. Hypothetically, there's a place called Brazzaville and it's a town, I guess, in West Africa, and it sounds like Brazil town. And that maybe is where the Portuguese had been in West Africa, somewhere in Angola. Maybe the Portuguese had been there. So what if Brazil made a little city on the coast of Africa? Well, that's controversial. What if India made a little city on the coast of East Africa? But the most important thing is to have a strong relationship between China and Africa. So China should have a big city and a lot of suburbs in Madagascar. So China should have arguably China can have a Navy base and an Air Force base in Madagascar. So China should be in Madagascar. And the reason for that is that Madagascar is a strategic location for China to have a certain sovereignty while also having good access to Africa. So to make a stronger relationship between China and Africa, there's a relationship already between China and Africa, which is from the Papuan Africans, and they're in Papua New Guinea, that is next to Indonesia. And there's Chinese in Indonesia, and then there's these Papuan Africans who are fairly African, and they're apparently somewhat hairy with South Asian genetics in addition to African genetics. So then there's Africans in Australia who are partially African. They're partially African Australians. So there's some Africans in Papua New Guinea who really actually clearly are Africans with the curly hair. And then there's straight-haired Africans who are African Caucasian hybrids with Asian heritage also. Caucasian, Asian, and African combined, and they have a black complexion because they're South Asian Hindus who are almost black. No, well, they're dark. I don't know if they're called a Dravidian. They're a dark Caucasian, mixed with African, mixed with maybe Philippines, Pacific Asian, mixed with Asian. So anyway, there's Africans in Southeast Asia, but there ought to be Southeast Asians, not only Chinese, by the way, China and Korea and Vietnam, and Japan, and maybe also additional Chinese of the Chinese type of people who are in the region of East Asia should have a large presence in Madagascar, and that gives them a closeness to Africa. But Africa and China have to agree, and the British and the Spanish have to agree, and the Arabs and everybody in the world has to agree on the freedom to self-segregate, so that if you move a population adjacent to another population, that they don't automatically all get mixed in, racially integrated together. They can stay somewhat separate from each other, and they could also have an integration zone with limited social contact without too much integration, but you can go to an integration mixing zone. And well, that's a great future if you allow people to self-segregate, and then people start living, and you have living adjacent to each other, separated by city walls. So you have ghetto walls. If you think of a ghetto without the negative connotation, you think of an enclosed neighborhood. Like, I don't know if it's as big as a district, or maybe it would be considered a district, or maybe it would be as small as a neighborhood, or maybe it would be as big as a district, but it would have walls around it, and it could be like, say, an international district in an African port city. So you could have Hindus having an international district in, well, I don't know if Nairobi is a port city. It's in Kenya, but Hindus having a district in Nairobi in Kenya. They say that that Idi Amin, the African leader, he said he didn't want Hindus or Caucasians. He didn't want them in Kenya. Well, I'm not going to say anything about that, but all I would like to say is everybody should agree on the freedom to self-segregate. Now, there's a lot of African genetics, as we can see in India. We can see that by looking at India. South Asia has a lot of African genetics that's been mixed in. And I said, India, it's time for India to come out into the world, emerge into the world, and India can be active. India can, I said India can be responsible for Eritrea and Djibouti and northern Somalia. And India can settle people there, large numbers if they can engineer it and have enough utilities, water for agriculture and residences. So India should help secure Eritrea, Djibouti, and northern Somalia. Somalia should be two parts. Mogadishu should be part of Ethiopia, and the rest of Somalia should be called Somalia. And India should occupy Somalia, northern Somalia, and Eritrea and Djibouti. France should be welcomed by Algeria to have a military base, if the French want a military base in Algeria. At least the French should have some parts of Algeria, or France should have options in Algeria. France should have large sovereign territory. I would say a military base would be the right idea, but also residences within the military base. Well, just to enjoy the climate, maybe. I don't know what France should have more access to Algeria, and Algeria should stop with those narratives that are anti-French, accusing the French of all sorts of atrocities, Napoleon's